My son told me to leave my own house for 30 days because his wife's family didn't like me. But when they came back from shopping that night, the woman they expected to find broken was waiting with something they never saw coming. The deadbolt clicked behind me at 4:17 in the afternoon. My deadbolt. The one I had installed in 1998 after a neighbor's house was broken into. The one I had paid a locksmith named Gerald Pruitt $42 to fit because Gerald had done good work for the people on our street, and I believed in paying people fairly for good work. The one I had operated every single day for 26 years. I stood on my own front porch with a rolling suitcase and listened to it click, and for a moment I couldn't move. Not because I was crying. I wasn't crying. Not because I was angry, though I was, somewhere beneath everything else. In the particular deep and quiet way of a woman who has spent 63 years learning that public anger accomplishes less than private precision. I couldn't move because I was trying to understand how I had gotten here, how a Tuesday afternoon in October had become the kind of afternoon where my son stood in my living room with his arms crossed and told me, in the flat, rehearsed voice of a man saying something he'd been talked into but had not yet fully thought through, that his wife's family needed 30 days in the house. My house. The house I had bought with my own 2 hands and my own 30 years of seamstress work and my own credit, in my name alone, with no help from anyone, in the year my husband David died, and I decided that whatever else might fall apart, the roof over my son's head would not. I stood on that porch for approximately 45 seconds. Then I picked up my suitcase, walked to the park bench at the end of the block, sat down, and called Margaret. Let me tell you about the house first, because the house is the whole story. I bought it in 1997 for $212,000, a figure that required every dollar I had saved in 11 years of alterations work and custom sewing, plus a mortgage I paid down aggressively for 22 straight years. 3 bedrooms, a kitchen that faces east so it gets the morning light, a back porch where David used to drink his coffee and listen to the radio on Sunday mornings, and a sewing room, a proper one, with good natural light and built-in shelving for fabric bolts, and a long cutting table I assembled myself from a kit, because the assembled version cost $200 more, and I had better uses for $200. I am Eleanor Marsh. I am 63 years old. I have been a seamstress, a dressmaker, and a custom alteration specialist for 37 years. I have made wedding dresses for women who couldn't afford boutique prices and needed something beautiful anyway. I have altered the same suit jacket for the same retired school principal every year for 14 years as his frame changed with age, and I have done it at the same price I charged him in year 1, because he is a gentleman and a person of fixed income, and I was raised to understand the difference between what the market will bear and what is right. My grandmother, Ruth Eleanor Marsh, I was named for her, taught me to sew on a 1961 Singer featherweight that now lives in my sewing room in the place of honor, the spot where the light hits best in the afternoon. She taught me that a stitch is a promise. If you make it correctly, it will hold. If you rush it, it will fail at exactly the wrong moment. I raised my son Liam in that house after David died of a sudden cardiac event in April of 1997, when Liam was 8 years old and I was 36, and the world had just permanently rearranged itself. I raised him alone. I worked nights during the school year so I could be home when he came off the bus. I sewed until my hands cracked and bled in the winter, until the cold made the needle hard to hold, and I kept sewing anyway because the alternative was not being able to pay for the things Liam needed. New cleats for soccer, the class trip to Washington, the second-hand but structurally sound Honda that became his first car at 17. I did not tell Liam these things to build a debt. I told him none of them. Children shouldn't be raised under the weight of their parents' sacrifices. They should be raised in the shelter of them. That's what the sacrifice is for. He grew up fine, mostly. He was a good student, a decent young man, a little soft in his opinions when it came to standing firm in difficult situations, but I told myself that was the normal pliability of youth and that life would season him properly. Then he met Olivia. I'll be fair to Olivia, because fairness cost me nothing, and inaccuracy would undermine everything I'm about to tell you. Olivia Chen Whitmore was 31 when Liam brought her home for the first time, 2.5 years before the day she stood behind my son in my living room with that particular smile she wears when she has gotten what she wanted. She was pretty, poised, and very good at the first impression. She complimented the house twice, asked about the sewing room with apparent interest, and told me that she'd always wanted to learn to sew properly. I taught her one afternoon on a practice square of cotton muslin. She had no patience for it. She rushed the stitches, they puckered, and she laughed and said she supposed it wasn't her gift. I remember thinking, every skill takes time, no judgment. I remember also thinking, very briefly and with the quiet instinct that I have learned over 63 years to take seriously, this woman wants the image of learning something more than she wants to learn it. I filed that thought. I didn't act on it. Liam was happy and Olivia was perfectly pleasant, and I was not the kind of mother who inserted herself where she hadn't been invited. The first small strangeness arrived about 8 months into their relationship. Liam stopped calling on Sunday mornings. Not a dramatic break, just a gradual fade, from every week to every other week to whenever. And when I mentioned it, gently, he said Sundays had gotten busy. I didn't press. Then came the wedding, which was lovely. beautifully. I made my own dress, pale blue silk with a hand-stitched hem that took me 11 hours, and several guests asked who designed it. And Olivia moved into the house and Liam was happy. And I told myself the small strangeness was just the normal adjustment of a son becoming a husband and reordering his priorities, as young men must. I told myself that. I kept telling myself variations of it for 14 months. Then Barbara arrived. Barbara Chen, Olivia's mother, a woman of 61 who carried herself with the specific authority of someone who has never once doubted that she is the most important person in any room, came for a 2-week visit in February. She came with Tyler, Olivia's brother, who was 35, unemployed, and apparently had been staying with various relatives in rotation for the past 2 years, in a pattern that, looking back, should have told me everything I needed to know about what the Chen family's relationship with other people's resources looked like. Tyler took my sofa, without asking, without acknowledging that it was my sofa. He installed himself on it with his phone and his laptop and his takeout containers in the way of a man who does not expect to be asked to leave. The 2 weeks became 6 weeks. I said nothing. I cooked for them. I managed the grocery increases without comment. I did not point out that Tyler had been on my sofa for 6 weeks without once offering to contribute to the household. I was trying. I was genuinely trying to be the kind of woman who makes space for family because family matters, even when the arrangement is uncomfortable. Looking back, I think my silence read as permission. Then one evening in late March, I was in my sewing room working on a wedding commission, a cathedral-length veil, hand-beaded along the edges, for a bride who had found me through a friend of a friend and trusted me with something irreplaceable. I heard Barbara's voice from the hallway, clear and carrying, talking to Olivia about the neighborhood, about property values, about how the house was in an excellent area. And then, when the time comes, you'll need to make sure it's handled correctly. These things have to be done right. Olivia's response was too low to hear clearly. I sat very still with the veil in my hands. Then I told myself I had misheard or misunderstood, that I was projecting because the 6-week visit had frayed my nerves. I finished the veil. It was beautiful. I did not sleep well that night. Tyler left in April. Barbara stayed until the end of May. When they finally departed, I felt something I am not proud of. Pure, uncomplicated relief. The kind that relaxes muscles you didn't know you'd been holding tense for 3 months. Things returned to something resembling normal. Liam and I had dinners. Olivia was pleasant, in her surface way. I sewed. I tended the back porch garden David had started in 1995. I delivered the cathedral veil and the bride cried, which is the highest compliment in my line of work. Summer passed, early autumn arrived, and then, on the second Tuesday of October, Liam knocked on my sewing room door while I was cutting pattern pieces for a client's mother of the bride suit. He sat down on the small chair I keep by the window. He laced his hands together. He had a look on his face that I recognized, not because I had seen it often, but because I had seen it once before, when he was 17 and had broken the taillight on my car and couldn't find the words for 10 minutes. He was working up to something. "Mom," he said, "Olivia's family is coming to visit?" "That's fine," I said. "How long?" He paused. 30 days. I set down my scissors. "Liam, your grandmother's patterns are in that room, and Tyler left coffee rings on my cutting table that took me. They don't want you here," he said. A silence opened up between us. "I'm sorry. It's just that Barbara needs her own space, and Tyler needs room, and Olivia wants her family to be comfortable, and they feel like your presence is..." He stopped. "They need 30 days, Mom. I thought maybe you could stay at a motel, or with friends." I looked at my son. This man who had slept in this house every night for 18 years, whose cleats I had bought, whose first car I had helped him choose, whose first school science project sat in a box in the attic that I had not been able to bring myself to throw away for 20 years. He was looking at the floor. "Just 30 days, he said again. "I'm asking you to be reasonable." I opened my mouth. And then Olivia appeared in the doorway, with that smile. The one that I now understood was not warmth, but management. The smile a person wears when they are performing graciousness while fully intending to get exactly what they want. And behind her, somehow already here, Barbara in a travel blazer, and Tyler filling the hallway, laughing quietly at something on his phone, in my house. They were already in my house. They hadn't just arrived. They had arrived and deployed, positioned throughout my home like people who had thought about where they would stand. "Eleanor," Olivia said, "things change. They came such a long way and they really need to be comfortable." Barbara didn't bother with the smile. "Your presence is what's uncomfortable, dear." Tyler looked up from his phone, grinned. "Come on, Miss Eleanor. Surely you have friends. There are some decent motels around here." I looked at Liam. He looked at the floor. "Priorities change, Mom. Olivia is my family now." The room was very quiet. My sewing room, my light, my shelves, my cutting table, my singer in the place of honor, my house. Okay, I said. I went to my bedroom. I packed a suitcase with the focused efficiency of a woman who learned early that feelings are for after the work is done. 4 days of clothing, my medication, my phone charger, and the leather folder where I keep important documents. Because I always keep important documents accessible, and I have done so since 1997 when David died, and I learned what happens when papers are hard to find in a crisis. I wheeled the suitcase to the front door. They had all assembled in the living room, watching. Tyler was already on the sofa with his feet up. Barbara had her arms crossed like a woman who has just completed a successful transaction. Olivia was directing Liam to move my hallway table to make room for their bags. They were already moving my hallway table. I walked out. The deadbolt clicked behind me. The park bench at the end of Crestwood Lane is, objectively, a perfectly nice bench. Wrought iron, shaded by an oak that must be 60 years old. Under different circumstances, I would find it pleasant. I sat there for 1 hour and 4 minutes. Then I called Margaret. Margaret O.C. Thornton has been my closest friend for 31 years. We met at a church craft fair in 1993, where she bought one of my embroidered table runners and told me I was charging too little. She was right. She retired 4 years ago from 36 years of private practice in real estate and property law, and she is the kind of woman who, when presented with a problem, does not offer sympathy before she offers solutions. I love her for both. She answered before the second ring had finished. Eleanor, you sound terrible. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. This is unusual for Margaret, who is constitutionally opposed to unnecessary silence. When I finished, she was quiet for exactly 4 seconds. I counted, and then she said, "Does anyone's name appear on that deed besides yours?" "No, only mine." "Good." A pause. "Don't touch anything. Don't move anything. Don't sign anything. I'll be there in an hour." She was there in 45 minutes. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. We sat in her car in front of my own house while she walked me through the basics. "You are the sole owner," Margaret said. "This is not a gray area. No one can require you to vacate your own property absent a court order, which they do not have and cannot get. Whatever Liam told you, he has no legal authority to remove you from this house. None." I walked out. "You walked out voluntarily, which is unfortunate but not irreversible." She looked at me over her reading glasses. "You have not abandoned the property. You have not surrendered any rights. You are still the owner. Tonight you're going to stay at my house. Tomorrow we start making calls." "What kind of calls?" "The kind that remind people what they're dealing with." I nodded. "But first," she said, "I need you to do one thing." She handed me her phone, already open to the camera. "I need you to get back into that house. Your house. You have every right. And photograph everything. Every change they've made. Every piece of your property they've moved. Everything. They'll be home soon. Then be quick." I used my key. The house was empty. They'd gone shopping. Liam had texted me, cheerfully, asking if I needed anything picked up, which I found both insulting and useful because it meant I had time. What I found took my breath away. Not because I was surprised, exactly, but because seeing it made something concrete that had been abstract. My sewing room. They had been in the house for less than 5 hours, and they had already been in my sewing room. My cutting table had been shoved against the wall. My fabric bolts, 3 years of carefully curated stock, had been piled in the corner without regard for how fabric needs to be stored. My singer, my grandmother's singer, had been pushed to the back corner under a shelf and covered with a shopping bag. And Grandma Ruth's patterns, the original 1950s and 60s tissue paper patterns she had kept for decades, some of them irreplaceable. The physical handwriting of a woman who had been dead for 20 years had been crumpled into a box. Crumpled. My hands were steady, but my chest was doing something complicated. I photographed everything, systematically from multiple angles, with timestamps. The sewing room, the hallway where my table had been moved, the living room where Tyler had already arranged his things as if he'd been there a month, the kitchen, where Barbara had reorganized my cabinets, the ones I had organized in a specific way for 26 years, and left my good serving dishes on the counter as if they were clutter. Then I went to the living room table. There were papers there, real estate brochures, a printed legal guide, its pages bent back, several paragraphs underlined in pen, and a form. I picked it up. My hands understood what it was before my brain fully processed it. A quitclaim deed. A form for the transfer of property ownership. My name in the grantor box. Liam's name in the grantee box. Only the signature lines empty. I stood in my living room holding that piece of paper and felt the world rearrange itself, the way it does in moments of genuine clarity, when everything you were telling yourself suddenly stops being persuasive and the actual situation stands plainly before you. This was not a visit. This had never been a visit. I photographed every page, every underlined paragraph, every brochure. Then I sent everything to Margaret and walked out. I didn't put anything back. I wanted them to know the papers had been moved. I wanted them, when they came home, to feel the first small chill of a plan that has begun to go wrong. Margaret's living room at 10 o'clock that night was, apparently, a war room. She had spread the photographs across her coffee table and was on her second cup of tea, which for Margaret signifies serious focus. She has 2 speeds, interested and intensely interested, and the photographs had moved her firmly to the second. This is attempted real estate fraud, she said. I know. A quitclaim deed requires voluntary signature, but the preparation of this document, combined with the clear intention to pressure you, the removal from the home, the manufactured discomfort, the social isolation, this is textbook elder financial abuse. You're 63, Eleanor. That designation carries specific legal protections. I'm 63, not elderly. In the eyes of certain statutes, the line is flexible. She looked at me over her glasses. What I'm saying is there are multiple avenues here. Property law is the clearest and most immediate, but there are others. She called 3 people that night. The first was James Okafor, her former paralegal, now a licensed attorney specializing in real estate and property fraud. 16 years of practice, offices in the downtown building with the blue awning. He listened to a 10-minute summary from Margaret, asked 3 questions, and told her he could be available the following morning. The second call was to Detective Carmen Reyes of the County Property Crimes Unit. Margaret had worked with her on a commercial fraud case 4 years prior and described her as the most methodical person I have ever encountered who was not raised by engineers. Detective Reyes said she would need to see documentation before she could determine jurisdiction, but what Margaret was describing sounded like it warranted a formal review. The third call was to a woman named Patricia Holloway, a social services administrator Margaret knew through a professional association, who confirmed that what Eleanor was describing fit the profile of elder financial abuse under State Statute 15A 1340, 16, and that a formal complaint could be filed as early as the following morning. Margaret hung up and looked at me. You need to go back tomorrow, she said. While they're out, they'll know I was there again. Yes, she didn't elaborate. You want them to know. She smiled the smile that meant she'd already worked this out. I want them to feel the walls narrowing, she said. People who feel confident do sloppy things. People who feel cornered say true things. She handed me her phone. This time, we're going to make it easier for them to say true things. The next afternoon, they went shopping again. I had noticed the previous day that the shopping trips were a pattern. Barbara and Tyler and Olivia, out for 3 to 4 hours, returning with bags. Always bags. I had noticed because the bags contained things with price tags I recognized as being well beyond what the household budget should have supported, and I had filed that observation away. I went back to the house at 2:15 p.m. Margaret came with me. We walked every room. She photographed the damage, because that's what it was, damage, the unauthorized modification of someone else's property, with the systematic approach of a woman who has spent 36 years understanding what courts need to see. The sewing room received special attention. She photographed the singer from 4 angles, Grandma Ruth's patterns in their crumpled box, the evidence of what had been moved and how. Unauthorized modifications by a non-owner, she said, quietly and precisely, like a woman making a list. Potential property damage, displacement of personal property, all documentable. Then she handed me a small device. This goes in your pocket, she said. Press the button on the side when you want to record. It transmits directly to an app on my phone and backs up to cloud storage in real time. I looked at it. Is that legal? In this state, one-party consent is sufficient for audio recording. You are a party to any conversation you are present in. Yes, it's legal. I put it in the pocket of my cardigan. We were done and outside before the cars returned. They came back at 6:47 p.m. 4 bags from the department store downtown, a bag from the boutique on 5th. Tyler in new sneakers that I recognized as a brand that charges $300 for items that cost $11 to manufacture, which I know because I have spent 37 years in the fabric industry, and I understand material costs intimately. I was sitting in the kitchen when they came in. I had made tea. Mine. In my own kitchen. In my own house. In the blue ceramic mug David had given me in 1994. Olivia stopped in the kitchen doorway when she saw me. The smile appeared, automatic and immediate, the way a screen lights up when you press the button. But something behind it shifted. A very small recalibration. A person adjusting. Eleanor, we weren't expecting you. I live here, I said. Liam came in behind her. His face did a complicated sequence of things. I set down my mug. I was in my sewing room today, I said. I took some photographs. Barbara came to stand in the kitchen doorway. Tyler filled the hallway behind her. I also found some paperwork on the living room table. I kept my voice level. A quitclaim deed, my name in the grantor box. Absolute silence. I could feel the device in my cardigan pocket. Steady. That's, Liam started. I'd like to understand it, I said. Help me understand it. Silence again. And then something I had not quite anticipated. Olivia's shoulders dropped. Not in defeat, in decision. The mask didn't slip. She lowered it deliberately, with the specific energy of a woman who has been carrying a performance and has chosen, in one moment, to put it down. She looked at me with something entirely different than what I'd seen before. When Liam first told me about you, she said, he mentioned a widow widowed mother, a nice house in a good neighborhood. I understood immediately what that meant. A pause. My mother lost her house 3 years ago. Tyler owes $50,000 in gambling debts. My credit cards are maxed. She said it without apology, almost without effect. We needed a solution. Liam was the solution. This house was the solution. The plan was always to get you to sign the deed. The kitchen was completely silent. Liam's face had gone the color of old paper. Barbara made a move toward Olivia, said her name, low and sharp. He doesn't know? I asked, looking at Liam. Olivia glanced at her husband. He knew we needed help, she said. He may not have known the exact shape of it. Liam sat down heavily in one of my kitchen chairs. He looked like a man who had just understood something that had been true for a long time. Tyler made a move toward me. Not a large one, but a move. I stepped back. Don't, I said. My voice was completely steady. This entire conversation has been recorded, every word of it. It's already backed up to cloud storage, and Margaret O.C. Thornton has a copy in real time. She's an attorney. She's also, as of this morning, consulting with Detective Carmen Reyes of the County Property Crimes Unit. Nobody moved. I looked at Barbara, who had put her hand on the counter as if she needed something to hold on to. Attempted real estate fraud, I said quietly. Under North Carolina statute, that carries up to 5 years. The documentation of a prepared quitclaim deed, combined with a recorded confession of intent, is a strong evidentiary foundation. James Okafor, who will be handling my case, explained it very clearly. Olivia sat down. Tyler's jaw was working with nothing coming out. Barbara lowered herself slowly onto my sofa, the sofa she had called embarrassing, and put her head in her hands. The room held its breath. I suggest, I said, that you call anyone you know with a guest room. You have until tomorrow noon. I slept that night in my own bed, in my own house, with the bedroom door locked. I was up at 6. I wore my pearl gray suit, the one I sewed myself in 2004, a complex double-stitched wool blend that took me 3 weeks and which I wear only when I intend to be taken completely seriously. Grandma Ruth's pearl earrings at my ears, her pearls at my throat. I went to the bank at 8:30 a.m. I met with Raymond Carroll, the branch manager, who had handled my accounts for 11 years and formally documented the deed with additional legal protection. James Okafor's office had emailed me a framework the previous evening. Raymond confirmed everything was registered correctly. I was in James Okafor's office by 10. He is a compact, careful man of 47 who speaks with the precision of someone who has learned that imprecision is expensive. He reviewed the photographs, the deed form, and the audio transcript Margaret's app had already converted to text. This is thorough, he said. My friend taught me to be thorough. The audio alone, combined with the prepared deed, establishes intent. If Detective Reyes determines there's sufficient basis for criminal charges, the civil action becomes much simpler. He folded his hands. Do you want to pursue criminal charges against your son as well? I had thought about this. Liam was used, I said. I believe that. What I want is for him to understand what was done to him and to me. The fraud charges should focus on the people who designed it. James nodded, made a note. That's your call to make. Yes, I said. It is. The eviction orders were filed by noon. Legal notice delivered to the property by 2 in the afternoon. When I came home at 6 o'clock, the hallway was full of boxes, suitcases by the door. Barbara moving through the kitchen in a stunned, automatic way, putting things into trash bags. Tyler loading his car, the new sneakers on his feet, $300 on someone else's account. Olivia was on the phone in the living room, her voice low and tight, working through a list of people who might take them in. She saw me come through the door and hung up without finishing the sentence. We looked at each other. She had no expression left to arrange. What was on her face was just what was underneath. Tired, young, genuinely frightened in the way of a person who had planned for one outcome and gotten another. I felt something for her. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not for a long time. But something human. The recognition that she had made terrible choices for understandable reasons, and that those choices were now doing what terrible choices do. Landing. I didn't speak. Neither did she. Liam found me on the back porch at 7:30. He looked hollowed out, the specific emptiness of a man who has been restructuring his understanding of the last 2.5 years. He sat down beside me. For a long time, neither of us said anything. Mom, not yet, I said. He nodded. We sat there in the October dark, the two of us, in the house his father had never seen, and his mother had built with bleeding hands, and I listened to the sounds of people packing up a plan that had failed. By 9 o'clock, all 3 cars were gone. Liam's car was not among them. That was something. Not everything, but something. I locked the front door, added the deadbolt, stood with my back against it for a moment in the quiet of my own house, and breathed. 6 months later, Detective Carmen Reyes filed charges against Barbara Chen and Tyler Chen for attempted real estate fraud and elder financial abuse. Olivia was offered a cooperation agreement in exchange for her testimony, which she gave, completely and in documented detail, about the nature and timeline of the scheme. James Okafor called it one of the cleanest cooperation agreements he'd seen in 6 years. Tyler's gambling debts are now also under investigation by a different agency, for reasons I won't go into here except to say that $50,000 in gambling debts tends to have a paper trail with friends. Barbara is awaiting trial. She is staying, I am told, with a cousin in Greensboro. I wish her no specific harm. I wish her the experience of being uncomfortable in someone else's space and having to ask for things she needs. I think she will find it educational. Olivia left Liam. He did not fight it. He has called me every Sunday for the past 4 months. We don't always have much to say. Sometimes he just calls to say the Cardinals won. He knows how to talk around the things that are too large yet to address directly, and I know how to wait. My grandmother's patterns are pressed and refolded, back in their proper place, in the shallow drawer under the cutting table where they have been for 20 years. The singer is back in the place of honor. The afternoon light falls on it exactly right. I am working on a commission now. A full wedding gown, seed pearls along the bodice, a train that will require 40 hours of careful work and all the patience I have. The bride found me through a recommendation from a woman I made a cathedral veil for 3 years ago, who told her I was worth every penny and worth every day of waiting. I'm sitting at my cutting table as I write this. The October light is coming through the window. David's radio is on the back porch. My house, my silence. The same deadbolt they used to lock me out is locking everything I love safely in.